The question is, when you have two brothers, one 7.5 and one 5, and they're playing, and the other one sticking to them like glue, they're doing what brothers generally do, and the younger one is obviously learning from the older one. I think that's pretty normal, no matter what the game. If this was a erector set or other toys, toy cars, he would do the same thing. And I think that they're being brothers. It's nice that they're doing it together. Doing it together is not a problem. The content is your choice. And again, when you think about making a media plan for your kids, think about making something that has the right balance, which means that the older one can have some more privacy or has more independent time than the younger one. Or you can use the older one to supervise the younger one and make him responsible, make him your partner in carrying out the media plan. And the media plan is a family, a joint enterprise. When do you stop them and you say enough? The answer to that is there are, in my estimate, a certain amount of time that is appropriate per week in non-school media. And in my book I give the actual graphs and actual tables and the actual menus for the week of family relationships, socialization, values education, education enrichment, and entertainment. When you create a menu for the week, then you can actually organize the life of the media life of the child. That's how you would do it. So a child who is 5 and 7.5, they're not that far apart. Certainly if you had a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old and a 7.5, that would be much more spread apart. You would want them to do some socialization with others perhaps, but you would want some entertainment, and you would certainly want some family interaction with you guys. And all of that is detailed in a book. 5-year-old, for instance, I think the maximum media exposure, non-school, non-TV, would be something like maybe 2 hours a week, 2.5, 3, I don't remember exactly. Not a lot. The question has to do with the degradation of social interactions among kids from the old days when we played on the street together to now when people are just sitting in their rooms watching screens. And the second part had to do with the problem of sensory overload and too much stimulation that kids get. So to answer the second part first, the American Pediatric Association came out with a recommendation that you don't have kids younger than 2 watch any screens, actually. And that's controversial, and no one is following it. There are plenty of moms who have kids younger than 2 who put them in front of TVs. So in my book, I recommend if you're going to do that, and they're going to be watching something, let them watch the shopping channels. There's actually very little movement and very little stimulation, and the people are generally nice to each other. And it's interesting visually. I think that when you actually get into looking at how a child interacts with a stimulus like that, you have to be very, very observant and see how the child interacts. Kids are attracted to fast-moving scenes, shifts in perspective and a lot of color. If you count the number of hours in a kid's day and you try to give the kid as much good stuff, then it does matter what they do for that hour. And just vegging in front of a TV and not playing outside more actively, number one, hurts his weight. He's going to gain weight. Reason for obesity in childhood is screen time. You don't have to make rules. And there's no media zones in the house, no media periods. I mean, there's certain times when the media is gone. Dinner time, homework time. The Obama kids don't watch any TV at night during the week. The media fills the holes. The media, it does require a fair amount of planning. If you're going to have the media fill the holes, at least have the right media in front of them. You have to say no, and this isn't, it's like saying I have to have this candy. you have to say no and stick to it. And say, we have a plan, we have a family here, and this is how we live our lives. And no, we don't watch this show. Oh, no, we don't watch it because this is homework time, period. Or, you know what? You can do anything you want. You could draw, you can read, you can do anything, but no media. You're not as helpless as, I mean, I hear that a lot from parents, I really do. And part of what I'm trying to do is empower you to say, look, if you don't do it, no one else will. So what kind of kids do you want to turn out? The downtime was used by kids to develop imagination and to have kind of alone time. And I think it's very important to schedule that in a child's day. A time when a lot of kids say, oh, I'm bored, Mommy, can I play? This idea of being bored it's a sad situation because they can't find within themselves enough to do, enough to think about, and they need something from the outside. And I think then the ideal thing is for you to say, okay, let's do this together, let's make some cookies together, let's do this. I mean, I know in the old days people made cookies together. The tools are rules. People have not changed that much. I mean, kids and what they need have not changed. I mean, it looks like they've changed, but what they need is the same thing. They need safety, they need all the physical stuff, and they need the right amount of stimulation from their environment and the right kinds of relationships. And overscheduling them and I've had kids in my practice who go, who are scheduled, and there's 2 or 3 kids, so the mom is always living somewhere. And these kids don't have any downtime. They don't have time to just read or just daydream. They just don't. I think it's important to have a plan and to stick to it. And I think that that's really the point I'm making. It's up to you to organize their lives. It's not up to them. It's up to you, and you can't get away from that. How do you allocate the right amount of time to the right shows? No, the point I want to make to you, and I make it in a book, and actually if you go online to our site, we have content sites that are good for kids. You have to select the content. That's part of the menu. You have to go online, you have to go to the TV guide, and you have to do the legwork. And there is no one who is doing that for you. There are few sites online. One is Common Sense Media. That's a site which reviews various children media, including movies, for what's good for kids. This goes to the history of TV and kids. That goes to what's known as the TV wars of the 80s and 90s, which eventually resulted in the rating system that you see now. You're going to think seriously about how you manage your kids' media consumption at home, and are you going to try to make a plan that's reasonable? Because all of that is possible. The key is the balance. The key to the entire thing is balance, and the balance depends on the age of the kid. Chess online is fine, or checkers is fine for a 14-year-old alone sitting there playing chess or checkers online. Being alone and playing some kind of game when you're 3 on an iPad is not fine, because the 3-year-old needs the parent there interacting with him. So that's the difference. The content, there's lots of content. There is so much online. And my whole book, all the books I've written because of the internet. And it's all electronic. These are wonderful tools, but it has to be the right balance for each kid. And you've got to give thought to that, because different developmental stages require different inputs. And that's the key. So your 7.5-year-old and your 5-year-old are not that different, and they're both boys. So you have an easier job than some parents, or balancing even more. The balance is about the same. But I want you to really think about how you're going to make decisions about media and make it a regular part of your conversation as parents. You tell them that this is, in your house, this isn't going to work. And eventually, if it becomes a fad, it's very hard to keep your kid away from that, because it's part of the social life. But again, you have a lot more power than you really You know, if your 5-year-old wants something and you don't want to give it to him, you don't have to.